Let's discuss with Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington State. He is the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for sharing part of your afternoon with us. I want to get your reaction to what you're hearing there from Secretary Hegseth, and not just that, but also his statement that this is just the beginning and that these acts are above board legally because these alleged drug runners have been designated as narco-terrorists.
Yeah, well, the fog of war and the whole fake news comment that Secretary Hegseth was making there is really offensive. I mean, first of all, when this story first broke, he said didn't happen, fake news. Now they're saying it did happen. So he's not always honest, and if he wants accurate stories, they should be more transparent. But the fog of war comment in particular is unbelievably offensive. There are people who are in the middle of the fog of war, and I have enormous sympathy for our troops who are fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan when they're facing terrorist threats, and they don't know if that person is wearing a suicide vest or if that's a car bomb, and they have to make very difficult decisions with their lives on the line. This was a boat sinking in the middle of the ocean, no threat to anybody, much less a service member. There's no fog of war here. This was a decision that could be made, and if you couldn't see it, then why fire another shot? You got no reason to. So Secretary Hegseth's complete misunderstanding of what's actually going on here is incredibly troubling. And then, yes, the larger mission is in question. And along the lines of what I was just saying, you have a right of self-defense, and self-defense can sometimes be complicated. And we want to give our troops and the president the authority to act in self-defense when necessary. But there is no direct threat to the U.S. This boat wasn't even heading to the U.S. It wasn't even, it wasn't targeting trying to kill people. They're running drugs, which is a huge problem, but it's not the same as facing an imminent threat from an attack. So that fundamental misunderstanding is why I don't think these actions are legal within U.S. law or within the international law of war, which we have pledged to follow.
One of your counterparts on the Senate side, Senator Roger Wicker, says that all the video and audio of this incident will soon be available. Have you heard from the chairman on the House side, Chairman Rogers, on when you will see it?
We have not. We hope so, but to date, the White House has not turned anything over. And they're in violation of the law on that, by the way. This whole thing was launched in late July with an execute order that came out of the White House to start this mission. By law, the White House has to immediately transmit execute orders to the committees of jurisdiction in Congress, in this case, Armed Services, House and Senate. They didn't do that. They still haven't done that. They haven't provided us the video. They haven't provided us the intelligence behind this. So this is not transparent. It's not following the law. And we don't even really know for sure what it's about. Is it about drugs, or is it about regime change in Venezuela?
Why do you think that hasn't been turned over, that footage, Congressman? Do you believe the administration is trying to hide something?
No, the main reason I think it hasn't been turned over is the theme throughout this entire administration. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made it clear that they don't think they have to follow the law. They don't think they're accountable to anybody. They do what they do, and everybody just has to live with it. And please understand that that's a real problem. Every administration I've ever dealt with has gotten into arguments with Congress about what exactly should they have to do under the law. But I've never had an administration that so blatantly said, screw you, law doesn't apply to us, we can do whatever we want to do. And that attitude is dangerous because the law is there for a reason. It's there to make sure that things like this don't happen. And also, we do want to know who exactly ordered this strike, because previously, Secretary Hegseth had implied that he was a lot more hands-on on these operations than he is now claiming to be.
That obviously leads to questions about accountability and what Congress can do. I do want to ask you on the broader point that we're hearing from the White House here. There are folks out there who believe that these operations are helping to keep deadly drugs out of the United States, who feel that these alleged traffickers are poisoning the country, as the president has put it. Why should they care about the legality of this strike?
Well, two things. First of all, drugs are a major problem in the United States of America. There's no question about that. I do not see any legitimate argument that blowing up a few boats with some cocaine on them in the Caribbean, which most people say aren't even headed to the U.S., is having a significant impact on that drug problem. There's a lot of other policies that could work better, but second of all, is that really who the United States of America is? Have we decided drugs are a problem? Therefore, if you are suspected, mind you, there's no evidence, no probable cause being put forward. If you are suspected, then the president and the United States military has the right to kill you. And we'll figure it out later. You know, it's capital punishment for drug smuggling and capital punishment carried out with Donald Trump as judge, jury, and executioner. I mean, I'm with you. I'm a tough on crime sort of guy, but that's what we're going to do? We're just going to kill people without any particular evidence and say, well, drugs are a problem, so what are you going to do? There are a ton of other, better legal options to address this problem.
Congressman Adam Smith, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate you sharing your point of view.
Thanks, Boris.
Of course. Coming up, a new threat from the Trump administration, calls for an expanded travel ban impacting a dozen more countries, and with some extreme language